Good evening, my friends. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can be with you forever. So I also have my membership program, so make sure to please subscribe to that. I'm going to be doing daily videos related to astrology, finance, and tarot reading, and just other relative information as well. I'm also going to be uploading lectures on various topics that I'm familiar with. You can see an example from one of my previous videos, and you'll get other content as well as I continue on through this membership program. So today I'm going to be uploading this for free for the public because I feel like this is an important time relative to astrology, basically. And since this is a realm that I'm fairly new in, I just want to demonstrate sort of what I can sort of pick out, whether intuitively and then looking at the information that's in front of me, because I've been just learning a lot about it, especially when composing the Planets album, which is, was a big project for me. And through the process of that, I managed to actually learn a lot about astrology in general and be able to utilize it. But I want to place some emphasis because I've been deliberating certain events in the news, especially today, because Pluto has gone retrograde today. And since we've just experienced back in January a huge astrological event, which is the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto with Mercury, Ceres, the Sun, and I think that's about it, in the sign of Capricorn, we obviously have seen the repercussions of that, which is quarantine, COVID-19. But I also want to illustrate the importance of understanding the reality that there is a shift going on in terms of the power plays and the power dynamics. And what needs to happen is people need to start recognizing that there is a shift going on here that's very relevant, and that's a lot of it's being played behind the scenes, stuff that you are not seeing out, so to speak. The main thing that is on the news is the presumptuous death of Kim Jong-un, North Korea, which people are pretty ignorant in terms of what that means for the future, basically, of that country and the surrounding countries around that. There is going to be a shift specifically with that country that I think people are going to try to overlook because it's such an insignificant country. But, I'm just going to say it. When I first heard the news that Kim Jong-un was severely ill, I started thinking a little bit about what the future or what another dictator would look like. And I just got this vision, this flash in my head of this Korean person, what I assumed was a man, which was this very domineering, powerful force that was very intimidating. But because it's a vision, everyone gets flashes of images in their head throughout the day. I kind of didn't really think about it until I actually saw a picture of Kim Yo-jong, which is Kim Jong-un's sister, who looked exactly the same as the image that was presented to me when I had that visualization. So that kind of struck a nerve with me. So we're going to take a look here into her astrology, because I think it's kind of important to recognize that there is a significant possibility that he is dead. And then I'm going to relay this back into China and how that relates to China as well. So let's take a look here. So you got January 12th, 2020. This is when Saturn and Pluto conjuncted. We're going to get back to this because this is also a really important aspect. So here we are, September 26th, 1988. That's her birth date. So we're just going to take a look here and try to identify some aspects. So first off, I just want to take a look right here. If you can see it here, is she has Mars, which is the red thing here, and the moon conjunct in Aries. Now, I don't know her ascendant per se. There's no record of her time of birth, but we can basically safely assert that the moon is at least in the sign of Aries. So this is kind of a general middle ground field. So we can kind of assert that the moon and Mars are conjunct in this point in time. So what that means is that there is a lot of tension, especially with Mars in its home sign of Aries. There is a lot of warrior aggression that's put under the surface in the subconscious area, especially since this is opposed her sun in Libra, which, as we can see, the sun in Libra is very much about being able to build relationships, about being fair, but there's this underlying energy of this warrior conquering, I need to take control of things from the very deep subconscious root, and there's a lot of energy there that's kind of being repressed because of this opposition that's happening now. And it's also, Mars is in retrograde, so again, that's a little bit disconcerting. Think about what's happening astrologically in the summer. Mars is going to go retrograde in Aries, so she is going to have a Mars return retrograde. So this is a pivotal moment in her life, at least from an astrological standpoint, that she's going to be returning to her original source, her original energy of what she was when she was born, which is a lot of this repressed energy throughout her entire life finally coming to a close. This cycle is ending in her life. Now, on top of that, we've had Chiron, which, if we go to today's date, it's now at 7 degrees, and her Mars is at 5 degrees. So Chiron just finished a transit orbiting her natal Mars. So that's pretty much eroding her sense of self, her sense of, that inner drive, so to speak, that's buried at the subconscious level. So this is a kind of a very interesting chart here. Just looking at it from these aspects, I'm not really that equipped to look at every other alignment going on here, but this is the thing that's sort of jumping out the most, for me at least. And obviously, if you know her ascendant, it would be a lot better. She also has her Venus in Leo. Since her sun sign is Libra, this is going to be colored by this Leo energy in Venus. So again, that's a lot of regal power, control, assertion, a lot of sense of, a king kind of energy going on here with Venus in terms of what her sun sign is getting this energy from. Because don't forget, wherever your sun sign is, it's good to take a look at where the respective ruling planet of that sign is also, because that's going to be coloring the tonality of this planet here, or the sun rather, to a significant degree. So this is something to keep in mind as something plays out, because this kind of event, Kim Jong-un dying, on the day Pluto is going into retrograde, is a significant look into what's happening into the future. And with Kim Yo-jong, there's going to be something with her that is going to be shifting in terms of the power play of the world. And it's not necessarily, I believe, coming. This is more of a speculation that I'm seeing, because why is she so prevalent? Why is she so important? Why am I getting a vision of her when it shouldn't be something that's particularly that important, let's say? I think this is definitely going to be directly influenced through China, which China is rising as a global force. What we need to recognize is that China has a head start in terms of being able to deal with COVID-19. It had it since January. In the West, we've only experienced it since March. So they have a 2-month head start on us in terms of being able to deal with it and prepare for it. So, while we looked back in January, China receiving the brunt force of the COVID-19 bullshit, we were saying, oh, poor China, it sucks. The reality is they're actually lucky they're getting it first, because this is giving them the upper advantage. While everyone's in quarantine, everyone's economic systems are breaking down, they're able to take this time to rebuild and repossess certain aspects, and this is going to come through 5G technology. Now, we all realize that next year is 2021. 2021 is the 100th year anniversary of the Communist Party of China. And this is the narrative that Xi Jinping wants to create, is to essentially, this is his agenda. This is not secret conspiracy theory stuff. There's a really good book that I'm currently reading called Inside the Mind of Xi Jinping. And his agenda is by the year 2021, when the CCP is 100 years old, he will basically create China to be the number one powerhouse in the world, right? He will surpass America as the number one country, essentially. That's his goal. That's his vision. That's his intention of creating that reality. And since we are in an election period, potentially it might not even happen due to this whole COVID shit, but it's important to recognize that the United States right now is in a weak position. Look at who are running for president. You have Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Okay? That's a joke. Like, if you think any of those people are going to have a chance against China, Russia, and potentially like very high chance of this new North Korean leader, it's time to get real here. And we're going to take a look at this other chart here that I have. Where was it? So this is when the Chinese Communist Party was created. So it's a Cancer. And the United States is also a Cancer, believe it or not. It was July 4th for the United States, July 23rd for China. So, this is a very important aspect, because if we go back to January 12th, 2020, the North Node, which is an important aspect, especially in Vedic astrology, which Westerners tend to ignore, but it's actually a very important aspect after I've learned about it, especially the South Node, which is transiting my own sign, and seeing it like when it was transiting over specific planets and how it would affect me. This is me looking at it from retrospective. It was like everything was lining up like to the T of what was supposed to happen in terms of like my love life, in terms of my inner drive, my ability to understand things and conceptualize my ego especially. It was kind of frightening to see it from a retrospective, but the South Node and North Node are very, very powerful, important aspects in astrology that people tend to forget about. And the North Node is in Cancer from this Saturn, Pluto, and all this other shit conjunction. So that means all this stuff that's happening in Capricorn, all this stuff that's basically shrouded by this South Node, this illusory aspect that's sort of restructuring everything in terms of dynamics and power plays and all this other crap, is basically being reshifted and reorganized, and it's aiming to Cancer. So that means all the power and all the respective power is going to be led to the Cancer, to that kind of energy, which so far as we can see is either the US or China. And right now China has the upper hand. China's coming first. If we look at Chinese astrology, it's the year of the metal rat. Okay, so the rat is the fastest. It's the first one. It wins the race in terms of the narrative of the lunar cycle in Chinese astrology. And with metal, you have to think of metal as very contracted, very directed, very focused, right? Metal is very much compacted energy, right? It's squishing it down into a narrow hole. So this is an energy where it's going to be the fastest, the most inventive, the most curious, the people who are the most quick-witted, and it's going to be funneled down into a few short amount of people who are going to be holding into this power. So this is kind of, I guess you could say, frightening, but this is a reality that we need to start recognizing in importance, because things are about to shift, and it looks like China is having the upper hand in terms of this world war that's going on, because this world war is not necessarily going to be, but it could be, you never really know what's happening. It's not necessarily going to be people fighting each other, soldiers going into war and battle, but this is a war dealing with technology. Think again of year of the metal rat. What does metal represent? It represents technology, wires, 5G, all of this shit that every country is fighting towards, of who's going to be the first one to get this, right? Get this power. Because whoever controls the 5G towers, they're basically running the world right now. And this is the war that's going on. This is the dynamic. This is the power play that everyone's playing out. And like I said, China has the upper hand right now. So people need to get prepared for this. You know, it's hard to say what will happen. And, you know, this is something that needs to be recognized because, first of all, most countries in the West are pretty divided at the moment between left and right, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, all this other shit. China doesn't have any of that. China is China. That's it. You know, when you go to China, everyone loves China. Even the people who are hypercritical of their own government, they're still like, yeah, fuck yeah, China is the shit. But even though I don't like the government, right? You don't get that here. You don't get that in Canada. You don't get that in the States anymore as much. You know, and this is going to be another dynamic that's going to be giving them an upper advantage. And they also have just more people in general. So, again, prepare for this kind of new reality that's going to be shifting because, you know, people are not really paying attention because they want to make sure things go back to the way they were in 2019 and before, where you can sit around and smoke weed and listen to trap music and, you know, go to the club and party. You know, this is when shit is about to get real, and you need to get prepared in a way for something, at least mentally prepared, so that way when this happens, you're not, you know, caught with your dick in your hands being all surprised. You know, you should be expecting this. You know, there's, for me at least, I'm getting ready mentally that if I need to leave and go somewhere else, I need to move, I'm gonna be ready to go and not be attached to certain things that are in my hometown, right? Because this is a period in time, astrologically speaking, generationally speaking, that is very similar to where we were during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, before the Holocaust. And everyone who sat around and waited for other people to help them ended up dying. You know, this is a time, this is year of the metal rat. You need to go and survive. You need to start running. You need to start planning. You need to start gathering your resources and getting ready for this kind of thing. And, you know, this is something that I've realized that needs to be repeated throughout many people on the internet and wherever, because I made that album End of World Rave 2020, which I didn't know anything about astrology. I didn't believe in astrology. I didn't believe even in God or religion or spirituality even. It was all based off of intuitive understanding that this made sense to make this album, right? It's the same thing with this vision I had of Kim Yo Jong that I got a few days ago. It's the same thing, and it's repeating itself. Because when I made that album, and then 2020 comes around, and all of a sudden there's this end of world energy, end of world mindset going on, which I don't believe the literal end of the world is going to happen. I don't think that's the point of that. That's why I named it End of World, not End of the World. But that idea came about. So that was when I sort of realized, like, shit, like, there's something to this. There's no such thing. This can't just be a coincidence, right? I'm not going to rationalize this because that's illogical. There's something else going on here. And this is what got me into astrology. I'm kind of going on a rant here, but, you know, it's important to pay attention. And I've been preparing for China taking over because I do appreciate a lot of Chinese culture, ancient Chinese culture. I'm like surrounded by paraphernalia, but I don't want to illustrate that I'm some kind of weeb or like, you know, I think it's superior or anything, but, you know, people need to realize that it's a very powerful culture and nation, and a lot of people are very unassuming of China in general. They don't really assume anything's going to happen from it. They, like, I talk to people and they're just kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. Like China, yeah, like they just don't give a shit. It's like to them, Chinese and Chinese culture is a joke. Even people who are from China don't even regard their own history and culture with much, brevity. They're looking to the West as their ability to learn things about the world. The West has accomplished so much, they want to learn. And this is why China is going to win ultimately, is because they're actually have this inner desire to learn things from other cultures and take it in. This is why America was so good in its, at its peak, was because it was taking everything from all these cultures and learning it from so many different points of view. And now there is none of that. Americans are just like, yeah, we're Americans, we're the shit, we're gonna kick their ass, we're Americans, yeah. And it's that kind of mentality. It's a one-way street to failure. If you're not in the mindset of wanting to learn and wanting to understand things, the best leaders are always learners, right? They're learning as much as they can. This is strategy, learning your opponent, learning what your opponent wants to do. America's not doing any of that. Donald Trump isn't learning anything about China. He doesn't know how to deal with China. That's why throughout this entire era where he was president, he didn't know what the fuck to do, how to negotiate with him, because he didn't have the balls and the humility to actually learn anything about them, because he was still high up on America is great, America will be great. And this is the reality that people need to face, that this overconfidence and this underestimating of China and of just other nations in general is a huge, huge failure. It's a huge fail. So I'm going to leave it at that. This is kind of a little long astrological video, but thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and sign up for my membership program, and I'll see you next time. Peace.